And we're live. All right. Happy Friday, Ram.
Happy Friday, Ash.
All right. So we're here to talk about managing calendar event notifications with an API. I'm really stoked about this one, and we'll get into why in a little while. But first, let's just, I guess we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Ash. I'm Director of Developer Relations here at Nylas.
And my name's Ram. I'm a developer advocate at Nylas.
Cool. So yeah, today we're going to talk about handling calendar event notifications, and there's a lot of fun stuff under the hood that we're going to get to talk about, and we're going to dive into some Node JavaScript code as well. Now I'll call out in advance, and I published this on Twitter and I think on LinkedIn as well previously, but just to keep in mind, whenever we're showing code samples for any given thing on this live stream, keep in mind that we necessarily need to pick a language to do it in. And today we're going to do it in Node.js. But, similarly, you could do this with our SDKs in Python, Ruby, and Java, or you could just hit the REST APIs from whatever you like directly. So anyways, feel free, even if you're not a Node.js developer, follow along with us. The concepts will remain the same regardless of what language you're using.
Yeah, cool. So let's first just do a quick overview of what we're going to talk about before we jump into the code, maybe understand a few use cases. So the scenario that we have is we have users that we are sending events to. So events we're talking about are calendar events, and we want to be able to programmatically send notifications. So with most email clients, with most calendar clients like Google Calendar, you would have baked in notifications such as a reminder to receive a reminder 10 minutes before an event. However, we would love the ability to actually send notifications programmatically. So this could be a few days before an event or even an hour before an event. So a good example of this is if you have a patient coming into a clinic, you may want to send out a survey to them just before they come in so they can complete the survey, like a pre-check survey before they actually come to the clinic. So we're going to look at a few different notifications that we can add to events. So we're going to first walk through creating an actual calendar event using the Nylas Node SDK, and we'll share code snippets afterwards in terms of where you can find the code samples that we're going to go through. And then we're going to look at adding two different types of notifications. So the first notification we're going to look at adding is an email notification. So we're going to see how we can programmatically send out an email a specific time before an event starts, a calendar event. And we're going to look at webhook notifications. So webhook notifications are really powerful because it gives the developer endless possibility in how they can actually manage an upcoming event. So a good example of this is if we want to send out a notification to Slack, we can use webhooks to do that. And Nylas allows you to create webhooks for all different types of events that are created using the Nylas API.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, just to kind of replay that quickly, we're gonna show you how to create an event, and an event again in this context is like an event literally on your calendar. In this case, Google Calendar, I believe. And we then will Ram's going to walk you through how to handle notifications. So of course we'll show you email. Nylas makes that super easy because hey, this is what we do. It's email. But the webhooks are like really, really cool. I'll try to contain my excitement, but webhooks are great because honestly, it's like, hey, developer, we're just going to tell your application something happened, and then the sky's the limit on what you want to do with that.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dive into some code. And if you want, feel free to go to our Nylas samples repo where you can see code samples. So let me share my screen. And we'll start by taking a look at how we can actually create an event using the Nylas Node SDK. There we go. So we're not going to spend too much time looking at the configuration. We're just going to look at the code implementation. And for now, we're going to look at creating an actual event using the Nylas Node SDK. So let's take a look at what that involves before we actually go through and run the code. So the first thing we're going to do here, I'm just going to go through this once, but in the first lines 1 to 12, we're actually setting up the Node client or the Nylas Node SDK so that we can start communicating with the Nylas API. So here we've imported the Nylas SDK and as well the event class. So we'll take a look at the event class shortly. But we need 3 pieces of information to be able to communicate with the Nylas API. So we need the client ID, we we need the client secret, and we need the access token. So you can grab this information by joining at nylas.com. You can go through our quick start guide to actually create an account and grab these credentials so you can run through the code yourself.
And I guess it's important to point out that, you know, where you have like on lines 8 and 9 there,
yep.
where you're using process.env. And then you have like those variable names, client underscore ID and client underscore secret. All of that's coming from a .env file, like an environment variables file that you have stored elsewhere. So once you check out our repo and any written content we have, we'll show you how to set that up. But that's where those values are coming from.
Yeah, exactly. So our repos will have step-by-step instructions, but we do have an end file here, just down here, that includes all the properties or all the environment variables that we need to get started. So after we do this, we're going to look at actually creating an event. And for now, what I normally recommend when creating an event is to create an event in the future as opposed to the past. So it's easier to look up. You can just look at the current week, for example, and see the event that you created. So we're going to create an event with a start time that's 30 minutes from now and an end time that's going to be 60 minutes from now. So it's going to take the start time plus 30 minutes to get the actual end time. And one thing I want to point out is that you will need an actual calendar ID. So the reason for this is we're going to be creating a calendar event, and you'll need to specify which calendar you want to add that event to. So there are a few ways to grab this information. You can grab this using our Postman collection, which we've gone through in a previous video. And as well, you can use the Nylas CLI, which we have a few blog posts on how to get started with using the Nylas CLI. And afterwards, we're just going to add some participants. So for now, I've just added one participant. I've taken the participant email and the participant name. And here we're going to actually call the function create calendar event. So what this is going to do is it's going to use the actual event class to create a calendar event. So we're going to pass in the Nylas client that we've initialized and all the properties that we need to create an actual calendar event. So here we have the calendar ID on line 29. Then we have the title, and we have the start and end time in the when property. And we've added participants as an array. So one thing I want to emphasize here is we're not going to spend much time on notifications in this code sample, but notifications is an actual array that we'll start adding events to, notifications is an array that we'll start adding individual notifications to in the upcoming sections of this video.
Yeah, that's a good call out. So if you know, in a real world scenario, you might start adding those immediately. In this case, we're going to walk you through step by step. So we're leaving that array empty for now.
Yep. And afterwards, we're going to save the event, and we're just going to, and what's going to happen when we save the event is we'll get back all the event properties. And for now, we're just going to console log a few properties. So the ID, the calendar ID, the title, and any notifications, which we'll take a look at in the upcoming sections of the video. So let's jump into the console and run this piece of code. So I'm not going to walk through all the different steps in terms of the environment that's been set up. You can take a look at our code samples repo, our Nylas-samples repo to take a look. So here I'm going to call yarn.start, and it's just going to build the file since we have a TypeScript file, and it's going to run the file to create an actual calendar event. So here we see that we've actually created a calendar event, and it has 4 pieces of information. It has the ID of the event, which we'll use to create the notifications or add the notifications to this event. It has the calendar ID, the title, and the notifications. So here we're going to take the event ID and we're going to start looking at how we can add notifications to this event. So let's jump into the next piece of code. It's going to be add email notifications. So before I do that, I'm just going to go to the top level. I'm going to call the add email notifications function. And let's take a look at how we can add email notifications to the event. So in this file, we need to first provide the actual event ID. So I'm going to update this with the event that we just created using the Nylas Node SDK. And we're going to look at how we can actually create a new notification or add a notification to that event. So in this function, add email notification on line 19, we're first going to find the event. So using the Nylas Node SDK, we're going to search for the event that we want to add the notification to. And then we're going to create the new notification. And depending on the type of notification, you're going to need to add specific pieces of information. So for this example, we're going to add an email notification, and it's going to be 25 minutes before the event. So for an email, we're going to pass in a subject and a body. So the subject's going to be build apps with Nylas Node SDK, starts in 1 hour. And the body is going to be very similar, build apps with Nylas Node SDK, starts soon. And one thing to keep in mind is there's endless possibility of what you can actually add as the subject or body. So an example is for the body, you can actually add a link if you want the user to complete a survey or complete a specific action before the event starts. So here what we're doing is on lines 27 to 29 is we're just checking first if a notification exists. If it does, we'll add to the existing array of notifications. Otherwise, we'll create a new array with the new notification.
And let's talk people briefly through that syntax real quick. So this is what's called a ternary in JavaScript. So this is kind of like your if else, but written much more concisely. So that's what that. If you're looking at that and saying what's the question mark, well, it's saying if event notifications exist, then what you're doing there is using the spread operator, the ... to put all of the existing notifications back in that array, in that new array, and then at the end of that adding the new notification that you want to add to the end of that array. But if they didn't exist, then on the other side of that colon where your cursor currently is on line 29, that's just saying, hey, okay, great, there wasn't anything in the array to begin with, so let's just put that new notification in the array.
Yep. Awesome. So after we add the new notification, we're just going to call event.save. So this will save the event for us. And what we're going to do is we're just going to console log out all the event.notifications. So this is going to log out all the notifications that have been added to the event. So let's try running this in the actual terminal. So again, we're just going to do yarn.start. And what this is going to do is it's going to add a notification to the actual event. So here we see that the event notification email was added with that's going to be sent 25 minutes before with the body and subject. So now we've actually added a notification that's going to be sent out to the users, all users that have actually accepted the invite. So one thing I want to emphasize here is notifications will only be sent out to the users that have accepted the invite to that specific calendar event.
So really cool. Just to kind of wrap that up then, like basically if you want to add a new notification, then what you're doing is you grab the event and there's a notifications property on it. And then that notifications property is an array. You're going to stick a new event inside of that property, inside of that array. And, you can see starting on line 20 there in the code, that's how you structure it. So if you wanted to do, an email notification, that's how you're going to structure it. You'll have a type, number of minutes before, a subject, and a body. So pretty, it doesn't require a ton of code to get this set up. All you're doing is grabbing that event and finding the notifications property and then sticking a JavaScript object in there that adheres to this particular structure. And now you've got a new event notification.
Yeah, and we'll see this as well when we add webhook notification. Just to close this out, let's take a look at what this would look like from a user perspective. So since we have a participant or an individual invited to this calendar event, let's take a look at the email that they would receive. So I'm going to go over to the email, and we see that we have the invitations, but also we have a reminder that this event is going to start soon. So the user would get an email with the subject, build apps with the Nylas Node SDK, starts in 1 hour. And they would also get a body that would contain similar information. And we can play around with this, or we have endless possibilities in terms of what we can include here. The example that I've been using is if you want to send out a link to a survey to the user before an event starts. So now that we've actually sent out email, let's take a look at how we can send out a webhook, which gives the developer endless possibility. So we're going to take a look at how we can add a webhook notification. So I'm just going to take this event ID over, and I'm going to comment out adding a webhook notification. So let's take a look at the code before we run this piece of code. And we're just going to focus on the pieces that we need to actually create a webhook notification. So we need the event ID. So I'm just going to take the latest event that we created. And we need a webhook URL. So in this case, what I've used Pipedream. Pipedream is a great tool for building out and testing APIs. And I'm using Pipedream to essentially create a bucket that will collect any webhook events that are triggered. So any events that are sent to this Pipedream bucket, I'll be able to capture it and start inspecting it to see what's returned. So this is really useful when you're starting to build out or test an integration. You can use Pipedream to test out what is going to be the shape of that payload, or what is going to be the shape of the information that's returned to you. And here's what the payload is going to contain. It's going to contain a text, build apps with Nylas Node SDK, and it starts in 1 hour. And one thing to keep in mind for the payload is you can essentially include any information that's related to the event. So that's a good place to include any context on the event or the participants that you want to use later on when the webhook actually fires. So in the actual function here, so this should actually be add webhook notification. Let me just change the name. Add webhook notification. We're going to do something very similar to what we did for adding an email notification. So first, we're going to actually find the event, and we're going to modify the notification properties of the event. So here, since we're creating an actual webhook notification, we're going to change the type to webhook, and we're also going to include the minutes before the event. So we're going to trigger this webhook 20 minutes before the event. And we need to include a few more pieces of information specific to a webhook, being the payload, which we've already seen, which is going to be a text property that contains a string, and as well the URL where the webhook needs to be sent to, or where the event information needs to be sent to.
Yeah, so maybe we can just call that one out real quick. So we previously, I think it was last week, maybe you and I did a live stream on webhooks, just kind of in general. So just as a reminder, like the URL that you're providing here is saying, hey, Nylas, this is where I want you to call me when you have an update. And so that's why you're passing a URL. You're just saying, hey, here's my endpoint. And in this case, that endpoint's actually sitting on that service called Pipedream that Ron just mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah. So we will see what this looks like as soon as we register this notification, or as soon as we save this notification. So once we have the new notification, we're going to do something very similar to what we did before. So on line 31, we're just checking if a notifications property exists. If it does, we'll add the new notification. Otherwise, we'll return a new array with the notification added. This is a ternary operator that we talked about just recently. And afterwards, we're just going to save the event, and we're going to log out all the notifications that were added to the event. So let's try running this in the console to see what it looks like, or try running it in the terminal to see what's sent back to us. And what we should expect is that more notifications are going to exist. We'll have an email notification, and as well we'll have a webhook notification created for us. So here in the console log, we see that we have an email notification, and as well we have a webhook notification created. And all that's being sent back to us is the information that we provided to Nylas. So let's take a look at what happens on the other side of receiving an actual webhook notification. So we created the webhook notification, we added it to the event, and now let's take a look at when the webhook is actually triggered. So we're going to jump over to Pipedream. So in Pipedream, I'm not going to spend too much time kind of going through Pipedream, but we'll just take a look at what a webhook event looks like when it's received. So a good example of that is we received the webhook event recently. And in this webhook event, we can take a look at all the information that's sent to us from Nylas. So 20 minutes before an event, we'll get a webhook triggered that contains the body with the property text. And this is the string that we provided. So what's really cool here is you can provide any context or information about an event, any relevant information that you want to use at a later point in time before the event actually occurs. So this gives you endless possibility when building out notifications. If you want to use other applications, or even if you want to send this to an application like Slack, you'll be able to send this notification through Slack as an example.
Yeah, so if you're kind of pondering like, okay, what's this pipe dream thing? Again, like this is a really cool tool, but you can consider this almost like a stand-in for your application, right? So if you did have like an open endpoint for Nylas webhooks to call your application, then that's the URL you would use. But a lot of folks do use tools like Pipedream to get up and running with webhooks super fast. So this is the kind of thing that, regardless of where that endpoint that you've opened for webhooks, regardless of where that sits, whether it's on Pipedream or anything else, this is the kind of information that you would be able to expect when that webhook is triggered and Nylas calls it.
Yep, awesome. So this was going through and creating an event. So we created an event, we added an email notification, and we added a webhook notification. So let me just stop sharing my screen. There we go. Cool. So definitely take a look at our Nylas samples repository. So we'll have this code example up for you to take a look. All this was possible through our Nylas Node SDK to be able to create an event and to be able to add notifications. And as you can see, there are endless possibilities when creating a notification. So Nylas really gives you the power to configure the type of notifications you want to provide based on the application you're building. And a good example of that would be using webhook notifications.
Yeah. So lots of really cool possibilities here. One thing we didn't get a chance to cover today, but Nylas also makes this super simple to do, to send SMSs as well. So of course, if you're using webhooks, the sky being the limit with webhooks, you can also have your option for how you want to, you could send an SMS through your own application. But Nylas makes it super simple, similar to email, to set that up as well. So if there's interest, we may cover that one in a future live stream. But for now, I don't know about you, Ram, but I love ending the week on like webhooks as a topic. I think it's really exciting because it really just blows the entire door open for what developers could do. But at the same time, we offer that convenience of just like making it super simple to set up those email notifications as well.
Yeah, awesome. One more thing I'd want to mention is just checking out our blog. So we always have content coming out on our blog about building with Nylas, and as well amazing tools that we like to use when building applications. So definitely check that out when you get a chance.
Yeah, we've got a couple of new blog posts a week coming out there on all sorts of topics, and I'm sure that this is one that we'll be covering there as well.
Yep, that's all for me.
Okay, cool. So I think we did it. Thanks, Ram. This is a really awesome walkthrough. Really appreciate it. And for everyone watching, whether you're watching live or in the future, if you ever have any questions about things, regarding Nylas or anything else that you want to know, feel free to shoot us a comment wherever you happen to be watching this, and we'll pick that up and take it. We said in the earlier live stream with Blag this week, we had a viewer request some a live stream around getting up and running with Java and our Java SDK, and we took that and ran with it and did a live stream around that one just a couple of days ago. So if you got more questions about the Node.js SDK or webhooks or managing calendar events, which are all topics that we covered here today, more than happy to do a deeper dive into anything that you want to know about.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Ram. Hope you have a great Friday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.